Mr. President, thank you very much, including that Olympic mention. As long as none of those medals are at the expense of British medals, I'm sure we will be generous on that front. Just to remind everyone, perhaps self-evidently, this meeting is on the record, including, because some leaders come to Chatham House, they then assume it must be somehow under the Chatham House rule, but we want to be able to have the opportunity to have an open conversation and to be able to record your speech and comments as we did with your predecessor here 50 years ago. And let me just say, to your last point, Chatham House will remain engaged with you, with Côte d'Ivoire, with other states in West Africa. The Africa program at Chatham House is, I believe, one of the largest, if not the largest, independent policy research group of any policy institute in the world. And so we intend to be part, hopefully, of the Afro-optimism that you mentioned, having been there with you through the much more difficult periods of recent years. You raised a number of very important points here. I'm not going to pull them all together, but I think your comment here about there being a new balance of power, a new continental drift that is bringing us together, I think was a particularly important point. You mentioned about youth, globalization of trade, technology, the demand of the big rising powers in Asia for the goods and commodities that Africa can provide right now. You also pointed out the negative sides of globalization, the terrorism, the illicit trade in goods and in people. But I think there's no doubt, as you said, there is something really fundamental taking place across Africa. The urbanization, the rise of the middle class, the search for better governance, and you gave some very good examples. I thought of the steps being taken currently under your chairmanship in ECOWAS to try to provide a more stable governance context for the future. And then the demographic dividend, which, as you said, is both a plus but can be a risk. And harnessing that dividend, if we want to call it, obviously is one of the most important challenges. If I could just take the privilege of the chair to ask a first question, and then I will open it up to everyone here. You've been good to leave us a good half an hour to be able to ask questions here. If I could just bring you to that point about the demographic dividend or risk. You noted in your remarks that the middle class is growing in sub-Saharan Africa. This has been one of the great features and remarkable features. I presume one of the risks, though, is that middle class is perhaps somehow tapped into global growth. There may be parts that are taking advantage of growth being driven from China, from demand there, or tapped into trade with parts of the EU. They're part of their Afro-optimism wave. And the question is, how do you make sure that growth is inclusive, to use the phrase, that you can really spread it across as much of society as possible? I'm sure you're working on many steps in that area, but I wanted just to focus on one in my question, which is the role of foreign direct investment. To what extent do you see foreign investors as being able to bring not just resources that perhaps connect you to globalization, but perhaps only benefit a part of society? How much can foreign investment perhaps also be part of the story of driving growth and jobs across the economy as a whole? Do you think that is part of the answer in that space or not?
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, it's part of the answer, and I had the opportunity last night to dwell about this intensively. And for us, foreign direct investment it will be key also to faster growth, and especially to the creation of employment. Let me give you an example. For example, in Côte d'Ivoire, you have about 700 French enterprises, and they employ 40,000 people, of which only 1% is of French nationals. So the job creation impact is really very, very important. And Côte d'Ivoire has always had liberal policies, except for the past 10 years when we had no policy at all. But it's always Houphouët-Boigny, everyone knows, was a liberal. And I myself am a member of Vice President of International Liberals. So we believe very much in liberal policies. And this does not mean that the social elements are forgotten. And so the difficulty we had over the past 10 years, for example, public investment was only about less than 3% of GDP. So now, this year, for example, will be at more than 5%, and our aim is to bring it up to 10% by 2015. But that's less than half of total investment. So it shows the role of private investment, especially foreign direct investment. And on that, we have asked the British companies to come to Côte d'Ivoire. I mentioned last night that over the past 2 weeks, we've had investors, entrepreneurs from Turkey, from Japan, from France, from Israel, and I think by mid-August we will have Chinese, the Germans coming. So don't be the last to come. Huh? So foreign direct investment is essential for employment indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We may come back to some of these points later on. Let me invite people to ask some questions. As I see hands going up, good. Please make sure that you introduce yourselves. Please wait for the microphone to get to you. And gentlemen, I'll start with you here. I'll go there and there. Yeah, and then I got you. The microphone coming right there. So you just keep your hand up for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Michael Bailey. I'm from Oxfam, an international development organization. We met with your foreign minister, Mr. Duncan, some 6 weeks ago, and were encouraged to believe that the food crisis in the Sahel would be moving up the ECOWAS agenda. But I don't think we've actually seen that happening. So I wonder if, in your ECOWAS capacity, you could say what more you think ECOWAS could be doing, excuse me, specifically on that, both in regard to the immediate needs of some 18 million people, but also the longer-term measures that are needed to address the vulnerability of those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. When we take that question, as it's, I think, quite a specific issue.
But it's very good. Prime Minister Duncan is here, so he will answer.
I think it was an ECOWAS question. I'm sure it was an ECOWAS question. we may let you think for a minute, Mr. President.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We met in Abidjan, I do remember that. But, well, as far as the problem of the Sahel is concerned, I think the head of state have a discussion in Yamoussoukro on the items. And they have decided to have a joint action on this very important problem. I think that there was about, 18 million people affected by this specific problem. And they have to work not only for the problem of delivering of goods, but also of storehouse to deal with this important problem. So, well, the question is underway as far as these countries are concerned. So that has not been forgotten. The work is doing. We have been approached to make a special declaration by the president of the conference, but the president asked the president of the commission to work on this declaration. So we are waiting. Maybe when we'll be back in Abidjan, the declaration will be made by, will be said by the president of the commission, not the president of the conference. But that will be a result of what has been discussed in Yamoussoukro by the end of June. Okay, thank you. Merci.
Well, let me add that the positive step this time is that the countries involved, Niger, Burkina Faso, have very early accepted to say that they have a problem. You remember in the past, especially in Niger, they said there was no problem until it became really a catastrophe. So the new president is democratically elected, and I think he has a strategy, and he's working very hard at this. But we need the support, of course, of the international community, because I think it's worse in Niger. Niger is the country which is most affected. Of course, now Mali also. The problem is there, but it's been compounded by the difficulty of the seizure of the north by these armed groups. So the whole strategy of getting back the territorial integrity of Mali, this is an important aspect for us to make sure we can open humanitarian couloirs to try to take food to the north. And this is not always easy. And we're working with many organizations to make sure that northern Mali, that people will not suffer even more than just by the occupation by terrorists and extremist groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, a colleague of ours here, Rob Bailey, just putting out a report right now about the importance of early action on this food business. The longer you leave every literally week or month can have huge costs, both human and resource-wise, further down the line. Second question was the gentleman here. Microphone coming. If you just introduce yourself. Microphone is there.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Samuel Davis. My questions rest on security and development in West Africa. Given that Ivory Coast is a new member of Mano River Union, and also with the recent clashes in the south, where you have recycled soldiers and soldiers from your opponents doing border clashes, how do you see the security instrument being developed with the relationship between Mano River Union and ECOWAS? That is one part. Then secondly, what are your strategy to ensure that trade and not aid is developed in West Africa? And also, if you can tip in on corporate social responsibility, particularly to 2050, wherein we expect the Gulf of Guinea to have a lot of extractive resources from West Africa. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. For security in the Mano River region, I'm happy to report that in the past 12 months, we had 2 meetings of the Mano River Union at the level of head of states. So this is really a new development because I had spent, I think, 3-4 years without a summit meeting. And security was really the major topic on the agenda. And in particular, Liberia and Cote d'Ivoire have had many contacts. Foreign Minister Duncan went to Liberia on several occasions with the Minister of Defense. When the mercenaries attacked the western border of Cote d'Ivoire, eastern border of Liberia, and killed 7 UN peacekeepers, Madame Johnson-Sirleaf closed the border. We had talked about this before. And we deployed a battalion along the border because it's 700 kilometers, including part of Guinea, the border with Guinea. And we have intelligence information that we exchange. In fact, we have not made it public yet, but it's public today. We have just arrested 4 people who perpetrated that attack and killed the 7 peacekeepers. And the head of the operation has been asked Madame Johnson-Sirleaf to accept to transfer him to Cote d'Ivoire so we can put him to trial. And so the cooperation is very, very good on security. Same with Guinea. These are the 2 countries of the Mano River which have a common border with us. And I think we also coordinate on many other issues, diplomatic, political. For example, the summit of the African Union, we coordinated on the question of the President of the Commission. It's become a very, very dynamic and proactive union now. Now, on the question of the resources available, I beg your pardon?
Sorry. Don't worry, it's one of our focuses going on. Okay.
Yes, concerning the resources in the region, it's true that the whole Gulf of Guinea is a very rich area in Africa, especially with a lot of oil and gas, also iron ore. And with Guinea, we're trying to see how to coordinate our efforts in the exploitation of these resources. And we plan to build a railroad on the western part of Côte d'Ivoire from San Pedro to Mans, so that it can help also Guinea in transporting the iron ore to the coast. Sierra Leone has, as you know, discovered a lot of iron ore, also oil. So all these countries have great potential. So this takes me to a question of trade and not aid. In a way, the question of aid is, I think it's not a major issue now, because the countries which used to give aid 20, 30 years, they don't have the money to do it anymore. So in a way, we have to be realistic ourselves and try to develop strategies where trade, especially among African countries, intra-African trade can improve, and put a lot of emphasis on foreign direct investment. And this is what we are trying to do in Côte d'Ivoire. Of course, you have the Chinese, who have a lot of money, a lot of resources, and who need raw materials. And many African countries are turning to China to take advantage of the situation. It's up to us to make sure that we do it under the best conditions. We have a policy. It's all the support. It has to be competitive with other suppliers first, and also, if it's public resources, it has to be on concessional basis, because we don't want to add more to the good debt to GDP ratio we have now. I think we want to keep this for a while until we're able to go to the capital markets internationally.
Thank you very much for those points. Gentleman here first. Yes, I think I've got the rest of you. Yep. Okay. Yeah, no, go back to the gentleman in the yellow shirt, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. James MacLeod, a member of Chatham House. Mr. President, you referred to Côte d'Ivoire's membership of the West African Monetary Union. And of course, the CFA franc, your currency, is tied to the euro. I would welcome your views on how you see the future correspondence between the CFA franc and the eurozone, given the stresses and strains that that zone is going through at the moment. And if I may have a very quick supplementary question, you have very rightly encouraged investors and visitors to come to Côte d'Ivoire, and I wonder whether you've considered reviewing the visa regime to make it perhaps a little more straightforward for people from this country to visit your country. Thank you very much.
As you've got two questions there, try and ask people from now, and if possible, try and ask one, because I've got a lot of hands going up. And after this question, I'm going to take them in groups of two, probably, after, if I may. So, well, I'll let you do those two from that one person first.
The visa regime, this is something I always ask a foreign minister, what are you doing about the visa regime? Yeah, he has instructions to make it simple, flexible, and not costly. So now you're going to give him an answer. So,
I think you just gave the answer.
Let me talk about the CFA franc and the euro. And yes, well, we were aware in the late 80s that we had an overvalued currency. And Minister Duncan and myself worked very hard on preparing the devaluation with Jean-Claude Trichet and Balladur, who was Prime Minister. And I think the devaluation in '94 was a success. It was difficult to arrange because obviously the fixed parity seemed to have helped the countries over the years, and particularly, I would say, the leadership of the countries. At the same time, I think The Economist was one of the first to indicate that the parity at that time was penalizing the farmers. And I remember I used to come to London when I was director of the African department and meet with Odia and others. And this issue was really a burning issue. I think this is not the case today, because also the economies, especially the economy of Cote d'Ivoire, the largest was in bad shape. Cameroon was in bad shape in Central Africa. But today, we have a better macroeconomic situation. The Europeans, in a way, are helping us because the euro is depreciating. So I'm sorry for that, in a way, because, of course, the consequences of austerity measures are terrible for the people, but they have no choice. That's what we went through in the late 80s, early 90s. So over the past 12 months, the euro has depreciated by 10%. So we don't have a problem of competitiveness with regard to Ghana or Nigeria today. And on top of that, we have a more coverage of foreign exchange and gold coverage of our money supply. The currency is among the highest in the world. It's more than 100%. And basically, you have in the monetary union more convergent policies, in terms of level of custom duties, budget deficits, and of course, price policies are about the same. So we're quite happy with the situation. I don't think we need to worry about the exchange rate of the CFA franc over the next few years. That being said, I'm an economist. I started at the IMF. I had so many country devalue for so many years. I know the advantage of having a depreciation or a devaluation, and if this has to be done, Cote d'Ivoire will play its leadership role. But I don't think this is a matter which is really facing us today. So on the visa, maybe the Foreign Minister Duncan will say.
A quick answer.
Thank you. Well, I will give, there is 3 main fields of work taking into account the instructions of the President of the Republic. The first one is to increase the length of the visa from 6 months to, from 3 months to 6, even to 1 year. That's the first field. The second one is to decrease the price by 40% or 50% of the price of visa. And finally, to be closer to the user with some, to use the honorary consuls in the different towns of each country so that they can have it on the ground. Okay, so that's the main 3 fields of work.
But for when?
We have to propose the result to you when we are back. So that will be your decision when we be back. Okay, that will be done before, let's say, before 2 months.
Oh, there you go. Okay. You heard it here. Thank all that.
So you know the kind of president we have.
Exactly. Cabinet decisions been taken here. Just stay here and do. I've got a lot of hands going up. I think I have just about everyone here. I've got 2, 4, 6. Still about 8 or 9 questions, which I want to squeeze in about 6 or 7 minutes, because these are the people whose hands went up early. So I'll take them in groups of 2 to start with. Please, 1 question each. I'll let the President decide how much he wants to. How he wants to answer the questions. 2 at the front here, please. These 2 people here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My name is Daniel Bakala from Human Rights Watch. Why do you think it has been difficult for Ivorian prosecutors to prosecute for crimes committed by forces that are allied to the government side? And Your Excellency, as you know, a number of independent organizations, including a UN-mandated commission of inquiry, has documented that there were crimes committed by forces and different groups that are aligned with government forces. So can you tell us about this? And of course, the government also has established its own commission of inquiry, and we're waiting for the report. So can you give us a sense of when the report might be published, and if it could be published in its entirety to the public? Thank you very much.
Pass the microphone to the person on your left. Thank you.
I'm Antonia Opriza from Emerging Markets, the magazine. My question has to do with the economy. You were saying that you see economic growth of 10% next year, 8% this year. If you could tell me, what areas you see growing the most? And is it based on exports or, what more details about?
I have a feeling you could take up the full 7 or 8 minutes remaining just answering those two questions. So what I'm going to do is just pull one more question in right now, because then I can do groups of 2 after that. The lady waiting at the far side there. I'll let you decide.
Thank you. My name is Ifoma Dickham with IDD UK Limited, a project management company, Africa-focused but UK-based. My question is, actually, the Côte d'Ivoire produces a vast amount of waste per year. And as a matter of fact, the city of Abidjan produces 1.8 million MT of waste per year. I would like to know what the initiatives are and what you have on the way in terms of alleviating the problems and your priorities as well, please.
Okay, let's take those 3, and then I've got there, and then I've got you, madam, and you, sir, and then I've got you, sir, and you. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. On the first question about from Human Rights Watch, I think we have a basic way of looking at this issue. You see, you cannot consider that all the people of the former regime should be treated exactly the same way as those who were at war during the wartime. You have the pre-war time and the wartime. Now, what happened during after the elections, the results were known. From 4th of December, the former president has his Republican Guard unleashed to go and kill people. And in fact, at night, you had the young patriots who used to go to the houses and put initials to see if the person were of my political party or my allied political party, essentially. And then at night, they would kill them. So these are what we call in French flagrant délit. They're known, they have killed, and they were caught, and they have to be tried. Now, on the other side, when the battle started, you had atrocities committed, probably by both sides. But this needs an inquiry. That's why we set up the National Inquiry Commission. And the results will be known soon, because they've finished their work on the 18th of July, and I should have received the report, but I travel on the 13th. So when I go back, I will have a report of the National Inquiry Commission, and it will be made public. So you cannot compare the two sides. So when people say only the people of the former president are being tried and not the others, it's not under the same circumstances. You cannot go and trial someone if you have no complaint against him, if you have no proof against him, and so forth. We want the rule of law for all. But if you take the Presidential Guard, they bombed, they killed the women, they went into houses and killed people, and when the war started, they were caught. So, and they admitted that they did that. So this is to clarify issues. So we have no problem with putting everyone to trial, and this will be done once we get the result of the commission. Now, on the question of growth areas, I think I talked about that in my speech. Of course, on the macro side, the first objective is to increase substantially the investment to GDP ratio. And also on the consumption side, with the reform of the cocoa sector, we should be able to increase substantially the price, domestic price paid to producers. And this will be helped also by the depreciation of the euro. And then you have specific vertical sectors, as I said, infrastructure, mining, energy, and all these. You have several $1 billion of investment, which will be put into effect in the next few months and years. So we're quite confident that we will be able to achieve these growth rates. On the last question, I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I did not hear it well. What was the question on the initiative for?
Was it waste? Waste management.
Waste management. Oh yes, we have. In fact, when we were at the Gulf Hotel for 4.5 months, and we got out, we saw that the garbage and had piled up, 4.5 months without removing garbage. It's just terrible. So we created a ministry just in charge of salubrity urbaine. And so they have, they're trying to get internationally known companies to not only to, well, the city is very clean now, but we have to use the waste also to produce electricity. So they have now, I think they're looking at several companies to do that. So please submit your your bid, and it will be considered.
We're going to run a little bit over time, if that's all right, Mr. President.
Yes.
I know you have a couple of interviews you're doing here at Chatham House. I think we have you captive here for a little bit longer. And I have a number of people who've been waiting for a while. I won't get to everyone. But first here, please, and I'll come to you.
Paul Milley, journalist and Africa Programme, Chatham House. Could you give us your view of the prospects for forming a viable national unity government in Mali, with the president going back now? And do you think the atmosphere has improved enough in Bamako that you can actually see some ECOWAS troops going there in the near future?
Thank you. And a question to the gentleman waiting there in the middle. If you put your hand up. Yeah.
My name is Khalil Fadiga. I'm a practicing lawyer in London. Mr. President, you stated that you aim to be among the best in good governance. I would say that the cynics would say that, we've heard this before, especially from your predecessor. What assurance can you give to those who remain concerned about the endemic corruption in Africa generally and in Côte d'Ivoire in particular? Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just take the question from the lady there, and then I'll do one last round of three, if we're okay, and then we'll be finished.
Hello, Rolake Akinkuwe from EcoBank. Mr. President, my question is related to Côte d'Ivoire as a melting pot for West Africa. One of the economic models that Felix Houphouët-Boigny pursued was to open up Côte d'Ivoire's doors to the rest of the region, whether that's in the form of skilled migration and economic migrants into Côte d'Ivoire from the rest of West Africa. Going forward, do you see this as a potentially viable model in terms of a regional trade of skills, so to speak, for the country as part of a program to build economic prosperity in Côte d'Ivoire? Thank you.
Well, thank you. On the question of national unity government in Mali, well, this is essential because you have to get most of the Malians together to really face the situation of invasion by the armed groups. When we met in Ouagadougou on the 7th of July, we were quite firm. We were 7 head of states with a contact group, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Niger, Togo, Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, a few countries, 7 countries, and we made it clear that we needed this national unity government for the sake of Malians, and because the problem in Mali is a division between the former president's group, Moussa Traoré, who's military, and the intellectual movement which outstayed him. Over the past 20 years, they have been in office one way or another. So they were negotiating, and normally President Traoré, who was in Paris, is in Paris for medical reasons, should be in the plane today to go back to Bamako. And his first task would be to form the national unity government. So we were in close contact with him. I talked to him yesterday, I talked to him this morning, and President Compaoré also is in touch with him. And we will be sending 2 ministers, one from Burkina, one from Côte d'Ivoire, to Bamako on Monday to assist him in this task. It's important that it's the Malians who should make the decision. But if we don't, the deadline was end of July, so he's asked a few days more, and this is not a problem, provided it's done quickly, because they should unleash the other steps, sending troops from ECOWAS, police and paramilitary, to help train the Malian army, to help also support the institutions, and thereafter have the military come into Mali to help with the strategy to reconquer the north. But these are, of course, strategic issues. And our chief of staff met in Abidjan. Today is Friday, so on Wednesday, and they now have concluded how many troops they want to mobilize, how many soldiers in Mali, in the military, are fit to be part of the contingent. So all these matters are being developed. At the same time, the negotiations are going on with some of the groups in Sardine, for example, with President Compaoré, Moujao with President Jonathan Goodluck. And so on Monday, I'll be able to receive envoys from Compaoré and Jonathan to see where they stand. So we're coordinating very well. I think now the interim president seems to be in good shape, and he should be able to manage things with more freedom than before. Now, on the matter of good governance, it's true that these matters were raised for many people when they come into office. I can say the difference is that I was in office 20 years ago, and I think my track record was very good in terms of implementing good governance. And this time, what we have done first, I have reported to the Supreme Court, as required by the Constitution, the details of my wealth, cars, houses, and so forth. Secondly, I've had all the ministers sign a code of conduct, an ethics code. This will be extended to all the head of institutions. And also, we're working on a code of conduct for the administration, high officials, ambassadors, and so forth, and also in the military. And this will be implemented. If there is a violation of this good governance code, of course, and I've already taken action against one minister, as you're aware. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So wait and see. Now, on EcoBank, the question of opening up Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire, you know, was a very open society. Unfortunately, we've had these troubles, and but basically, I think Ivorian is hospitable, and probably the difficulty with the past years, the economic recession and so forth. Like every country, if you have a recession, they say it's the foreigners who are taking the jobs. So this is what happened in Côte d'Ivoire, and but with prosperity, with more integration in the sub-region, and also we have an objective. Foreign Minister Duncan, myself, is to really break down all the trade obstacles among the major traders in West Africa. This means essentially Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal. We have to assume that. And I am sure that with Nigeria we'll be able to do this, because if we're not, we have too complicated trade measures. And well, like the Europeans at the beginning, it's just too difficult to export, for example, from Cote d'Ivoire to Nigeria, or from Nigeria to Cote d'Ivoire, unless it's oil. So this does not make sense. I think if we're able to break some of these obstacles, we can increase substantially trade among the countries. And we have in our development plan the prospect of being self-sufficient in rice production, I think in 3 years. We import now 1 million tons. But in 5 years, we want to produce, to have a surplus of 1 million tons. No imports and a surplus of 1 million tons, and it should go to Senegal, to Burkina, to Mali, to Nigeria and other countries. Because we know we can produce 5 million tons of rice, according to the contacts we've had with India, with Thailand, with Pakistan, with countries which produce a lot of rice. So trade will be a major, liberalizing trade will be a major objective of my presidency. As I said, it's a democracy, of course, peace, but also trade liberalization. Thank you.
We've gone way over time, and I apologize. You've given such good answers, and they've been very good questions. I had a few people left, but I'm just going to give one person the last question because they did put their hand up right at the beginning. I apologize to the other two who were actually the last on my list. The person who was there right at the beginning is the gentleman with the purple tie. I'm sorry for the rest of you. I cannot keep the president longer than I have done already.
Thank you very much. Peter Marsden from Concordis International, working with the CDVR, working in partnership with the CDVR to engage the diaspora in this process of dialogue and reconciliation. Mr. President, thank you for your remarks. How, as you will appreciate, there are some people who are reluctant to engage in this process of dialogue, or indeed in the political process. How do you encourage them to engage with that process? And also, what assurances can you give that if they engage in the process of dialogue, that their concerns will be heard and responded to by the government? Thank you very much.
Yes, I think this is really a very important question. You know, when I was at the Gulf Hotel, and that's after 2-3 months, many people were getting discouraged. And I was telling them, look, I've been elected president, so it does not matter what happens. But I was asking myself about my predecessor. I told Duncan, Ms. Touré, others, I said, well, suppose he's succeed in killing me. What will it bring to him? Because he's not recognized by the Ivorian people. Everyone knew he lost the elections. He's not recognized by the international community because they supervised the election. They knew he lost it. So I said, why is he continuing to do this to our country? And this is the same question I'm putting to myself concerning those who continue to stay out of the process. Because being president, it's to make a contribution to your country and to your people. If you're president and you cannot bring anything to your country, why should you want to remain president? I was asking myself those questions. And so on the CDVR, we really have the same reflection because we've had democratic elections. The country is back on track. There is security, there is peace. And you have a group of people who don't want to embark on this. When I was forming the government in May last year, I talked to them. I said, come, we'll have portfolios for you. They said yes. And you know, then 3-4 days later, they came to tell me that they were threatened by the extremists among their ranks, and that if they accept, they'll have trouble. So they didn't come into government. Same thing with parliamentary elections. I asked them that. I said, why don't you come? Because the laws will be examined and voted by Parliament. So if you're absent from the government, you will not participate in the draft laws. If you're absent from Parliament, you will not be able to make your contribution. So why would you want to stay out? Because the country will continue. The laws will be voted. And even if you're in minority in the Parliament or in government, your voice will be heard. And I promise to be equitable to all. They again discussed the matter. And in the end, they said, no, we cannot because we have too much pressure. But some of them came in as independent candidates, and now they have been able to form an independent group in Parliament, which is positive. Same thing with the Electoral Commission. The President has a seat on the Commission. I said I'm willing to, since my party already has a seat, I'm willing to give my seat to the party of a former president, so they can be part of the electoral process, a bureau of 4 or 5 people. And yet, there was a person already in the group. We talked to him, he said yes. And when I wanted to sign the decree, he came in and said, no, he cannot because he will be under threat by others. So in a way, I'm relating all this to say that I'm very, very disturbed by this because there is a process. When we were in the opposition, we went into a process, although we knew it was not fair that the former president did not win the election, but we accepted to be in the process because at some stage we thought we would have a democratic election. But now we have a group of people who don't want at all to participate. We have made all the offers. So all that I can say is continue to tell them that they really have the wrong way of tackling this issue because violence will not help, and we don't want violence. And we're now in democratic regimes, so coup d'etats are over. So staying out of the democratic legal process, I think, is really a big mistake. So I'd like everyone to understand that we want peace in Côte d'Ivoire, and we want to be together to develop our country, and it's a responsibility of mine as president of all Ivorians. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for a very thoughtful speech to kick off this discussion. Thank you for taking so many questions, and I apologize for those many that I wasn't able to take. I'm not sure that President Houphouët-Boigny had to take this many questions. I doubt it. But this is partly, I think, a reflection of the interest and the sense of opportunity that exists so much in Africa, in West Africa, in Côte d'Ivoire. I think the interest you see here in the room, the questions that you're getting, and also we appreciate very much not just your frankness with us, but I think it'd be fair to say on our behalf, certainly Chatham House's behalf, we wish you every success in the future with your efforts for your country. Thank you very much for staying so patiently here. If I could ask you to please stay in your seats, because now the President is definitely be late for the meeting he's meant to be having upstairs. And we thank you very much for coming. And please give a very strong hand to President.
Well, thank you.